But you're not going to be able to move up the chain if you don't have a strong sense of self, and that's self-awareness. Out of all the tools, pick one, master it. Because from there, you'll be able to protect yourself from yourself in times of need. And then you'll be able to step to the fourth one, which is the highest level of awareness, which is I call legacy awareness, where everything that you've invested in your life outlives your life, that your life mattered, that you made a difference, right? You leave a legacy behind of not chaos, a legacy of change.
How do people like us, with a drive to excel and a belief in our own agency, navigate life's complexities? How do we sift through the vast sea of knowledge to find actionable insights in areas like habits, health, wealth, and relationships? Come with me as I interview intellectuals and all-stars to refine life's ungoogleable lessons. I save you time and effort by finding the best of life's messy questions in this podcast to give you the answers. My name is Blake Bottrell, and this is the Distilled Podcast. My guest today was the first Canadian contact handler selected for duty after World War II. His time in the intelligence agency led him to fall in love with behavioral analysis, enough to have now accrued over 30,000 hours teaching others these not-so-Jedi mind tricks. From acquiring his nickname because of a stapler to acquiring his brand from 8 years of introductions that he didn't think were fitting, I'm joined today by the retired spy. JJ Brun, thank you for your service and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Blake. Pleasure to be here.
So I'm just curious, what's your favorite story from deployment that you never get a chance to tell?
We don't talk much about character building moments on deployments. It's normally when you have one of your colleagues that show up at the house. And I remember one time, Serge, spent a lot of time with Serge when I was in the first division in Kingston. And one day he showed up at the house with a six-pack just to catch up, and all the war stories came out. And my son was listening, and he had never heard about, because we don't talk about deployments and the things that happen. My biggest story, I guess, or case that I ran was when I was given the responsibility to cultivate a relationship with what we had branded him as a self-declared mayor of Mostar. He wasn't the mayor. He just projected himself as the mayor. And you really have to go about, connecting with them and then establishing and maintaining rapport. And it was just, how in the heck am I supposed to do that in your first meeting? And I had all the mechanics in regards to how to be a contact handler. But once there's nothing like actually being the boots on the ground. So when you go to spy school, like I went to spy school in the UK to be a contact handler, that's environmental awareness. As in, that's a moment in time where you discover and experience something new. So I had no clue. I was a-cluistic, one without a clue in regards to this type of work within the intelligence community. And I had a lot more pressure on me because of being the first Canadian. I did not want to fail. I often would say that I had a survivor moment. And the Survivor, that whole TV series, you don't want to be the first one voted off the island. Being the first Canadian, I don't want to be the first Canadian voted off the island. And I just put that extra pressure on me because I was new at this, and other people were more seasoned at the safe house. They had a plethora of experience. I'm the first one coming in. I'm coming from an organization that just trained me. Everybody in the safe house was not or formally trained. It was just based on their experience that they were nominated to be there, anywhere from 5 to 7 different nationalities, English being the working language. It was challenging. So when I was provided that first case and that self-declared mayor of Mostar, I did not know how to get started. And I just basically started with, I'm just curious. And I did not know that those 3 words, I'm just curious, keeps your subconscious minds open. Because he came in, what are you curious about? I'm just curious. How did you ever get started? Or how did you ever get interested in politics? Because I had memorized, when you go to learn in the craft of being a contact handler, there's also other training that you have to take on yourself. And for me, because I was going to get into the people side like I'm very task oriented, task focused. I had a very good career in regards to that's what was needed. But now I was asked to build relationships, and I'm like, how in the heck do you do that when you don't really give a rip about people? And that was a big aha for me. That okay, and I was starting learning about different personalities and temperament styles and cultural awareness, and just to give me that little extra edge that I needed. And I came up across the 10 most effective feel good ice breaking questions. So I memorized those, Blake. I memorized because I was told that if you memorize these questions, you'll always be able to carry a conversation anywhere, anytime with anyone. And the first question is, how did you ever get started in the widget business? So you're supposed to change that and reframe it. And I just basically said, I'm just curious. How did you ever get interested in politics? Because of the position that he was projecting. And he was supposed to talk for 10 or 15 minutes nonstop. Like he talked for 45 minutes nonstop with one question. And the more he talked, the more he revealed his preferred communication style, his personality, if you wish. And then I started modeling that. So for me, it was a big aha in regards to, wow, this stuff really works if you just apply it. But the concern of you're out of your league, right? That whole imposter syndrome being the first one, and but then it just got better and better and better, and I was able to discern how best to connect with him by design and not by chance, because I applied what I call the four ings to connecting. Something that it's just for me. I just needed something to make sense. And the four ings, as in it's like a ladder. If you think about a ladder, you have to connect it to the ground. Well, in an interaction with him, I had to make a connection. I'm not a big believer, Blake, in regards to that all these book of instant rapport. I'm like, how the heck you go? How do you do that? And I remember they were telling us, oh, you need to establish rapport. Oh, okay. How do you do that? Well, you just do rapport. Okay. But how do you do that? Well, you have rapport. And they give you the definition of the dictionary. I'm like, repeating the definition is not telling me the how to. How do you establish rapport? Different personalities, different temperament styles, you would probably do it differently. So, but I do believe you can make an instant connection. And I'm French, and my second language is English. And there's the word complete and compete. And every interaction I notice that I have with people, I will either complete or compete with that interaction. And I was just writing those words down, and I'm like, what has the letter L in it? Like complete has a letter L in it. And I don't know why. My brain just went to, what's the L factor of connecting? See, I'm very task focused. I do a lot more of internal dialogue. And I realized that until you can actually find a common link, a common like, common love, no connection. So with this individual, he actually was the one that provided me the link. Because I'm French and I got branded as JJ, because my full name is Jean Jacques Joseph Brun. Roughly translated, that'd be John Jack Joseph Brown. But they couldn't pronounce my name overseas, Jean. They couldn't pronounce it, but they could say John Jack. Hey, John Jack. And for some reason, they thought they were bilingual until a British colleague came in the operational room. We were just two of us. He needed something on my desk. And he said, hi, Jai Jai. I turned and I answered and I got branded. If you don't brand yourself, somebody else will. And I got branded JJ. So with this self-declared mayor of Mostar, JJ was easy to remember. Jean-Jacques, oh, he's French. Oh, he wants to separate from Canada. And he wanted to separate from the Federation. You understand us. You will talk to your general on our behalf. Like he provided me the link. And then from there, we just built a relationship, a professional relationship. And I got branded. I got really branded as in he was not a nice person. He profited tremendously throughout the war. And he also published my name in a local newspaper. And that wasn't good. He published my name, my cover story, and where I lived in Medjugorje. I still have the newspaper because when that happened, I was like, okay, what's Am I done? And then we realized that at the end, he just wanted to elevate his position, that NATO talks to him and not the actual mayor. So then we had to make a decision as to how we're going to play this. So I became a very pro hardliner Croat promoter, which is where he fitted in and just went down that road. So it was not like I had a strategic plan. It's more of being able to start a conversation and then making sure that you're just going down in a professional manner. But it was one of the defining moment because he was connected, and later on we found out that he was the Al Capone. He actually ran all of Mostar. He controlled everything. So it became where he wanted to elevate his position, and we were able to build a relationship and go deep into that relationship and cultivate even more people around him so that the commanding officer or our peers could make informed decision as to what's going on the ground. So human intelligence is very cool. It's sexy. It's also very stressful because you're dealing with people, and if you don't have a frame of reference in regards to understanding human dynamics and people's preferences and expectations, you're going to find yourself at a disadvantage. So that's one thing that I learned on my own. I wished I had learned this when I was in high school. Wish I had this in university. Wish I had this when I joined the military, because we were dealing with people every day, and we have no frame of reference on how to best interact. Even raising your family, I have a son, I have a daughter, and the fact that I have these tools, I could incorporate these tools to them at a very young age, and they're thriving in their young career. So one is in Montreal and doing extremely well for a young man in his position. And then my daughter just got married last year, and now she is in Germany with her husband, visiting the world or seeing the world. And she just got a job at the same time. So, as a social worker, she is trained in the four temperament model of human behavior, which I specialize in that tool, as you well aware. And from there, they're able to distinguish themselves and make themselves look a little bit different. So it's funny how your mess is your message, right? As in, I never wanted to be the retired spy. It was a job. I left university because I had a fight with my dad. And I said, you know what? It's the last time that somebody's going to tell me what to do. And I joined the military. That just does not make any sense. I knew I needed to get out. What I did not know is that the military was really what I was wired for, and had a very successful career in the military for 20 years. And now I'm still working for the military in the sense of equipping people, equipping their staff or their personnel for works of service. So 25 years after, I'm still I'm still in it, but without the uniform.
You mentioned not wanting to be the first survivor player voted off the island. And I know you're also a little bit of a survivor fan yourself. So what's the best thing that you've learned from studying the behavior of survivor players?
Great question. Well, to be true, I thought it was a stupid show until Dr. Robert A. Rome, was in Canada, and we were doing training together. And it was Wednesday night, and it's like, "Do you have a TV?" I'm like, "Do I have a TV? Of course I have a TV." Because it's Survivor, and I'm like, "Survivor?" It's like, what? And he was passionate about Survivor, and then he was like, "Okay, well, so we put it on, and we're looking at Survivor, and he's just really immersed in it." And I'm like, whatever interested you to look at Survivor? Well, you're seeing human dynamics, you're seeing the personalities at play, and under duress and stress, as in, not winning, or all the interactions, or a lack of food and not sleeping well. It's low accumulating stress. It builds, it builds, it builds, and people respond or react. And then he shared with me that he wanted to apply to go to be on Survivor. And I'm like, what the heck would you want to go on Survivor for? You're a world renowned speaker. Well, he goes, for $1 million. Like he actually thought that he could win $1 million. And I'm like, because everyone on Survivor is a little bit some for like there's a little bit of quirkiness in them. There's always something special about them. And he's a former pastor. He's a chief scout of the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's a world-renowned speaker. So there was a little bit of quirkiness because he actually recruited people or helped the Arizona Diamondbacks win the championship because they recruited based on personality styles. And he has the World Series ring. He recruited based on temperament styles. That was 8 years before Moneyball. So he was ahead of the curve. So he thought he had that little bit of quirkiness. He would not have shared that during the event, right? As in, he would have kept that for himself. And then he said something to me, and I'm like, really? He saw a pattern. He saw a pattern that the first people to get voted off the island are the big talkers, low producers. And he referred to as an I personality. So those that are inspiring, influencing, inducing, they're very outgoing and people oriented. They can talk a mean game, then they don't produce. Big talkers, low producers. And it says those are the first one to get voted off. And I'm like, really? And then says, yeah. And then what you'll see is you have to have a social game. And I'm like, I don't have a social game. I have a task game. I don't have a social game. And it's like, well, you have to interact and you have to be careful and you have to think things through. And he just came up with so many anecdotes. And I'm like, really? And then he said something at the end. All the reserve cast members, what they're going to do is they're going to come together and vote off everyone that's strong and big. Big and strong get voted off. That's because the camp tends to be built. And when they don't need them anymore, they get them voted off. And then at the end, whomever is the nicest person gets to be voted off because everybody will vote for a certain persona. And that's the S style blend. They're supportive, sweet, shy. They are by far the nicest people you're going to come in life. So at the end, when you have your three remaining castaways in there, whomever is the nicest tends to get all the votes. So you have to make sure that you get them off. So he was seeing patterns, and it's like that got me interested to the point where it has become a family event. As in the last 3 or 5 years, Wednesday night is when Survivor shows up, and then it's like that's sort of like our weekend. It's our family. We get down, we'll order in, and then we're going to we're going to have our members. And you have to remember that we see this whole Survivor in a once a week. They're in day one, day two. This is nonstop for them. So we have a break, we can overanalyze, but they are stuck in it. So if they were blindsided, they're still ticked off. Now they have to regroup. There's cameras. So it's fascinating just to watch human interaction, human dynamics. And you did you voted in the wrong group. Now you're in the bottom. Now you have to justify or explain. And you see people when they're tired and angry, yeah, they react. So Survivor has become a way for me to hone in on my skills and to see, right, the temperament styles of the traits under control, how they tend to manifest themselves, and when they're ungrounded, out of control, how they tends to manifest themselves, and who can best respond versus react to the day-to-day challenges of Survivor. So big fan. Right now the series is done. So we're gonna have to wait until I think what is it, January or February? I think would be the next one. But now Quebec has Survivor, as in the French version of this, and it's funny. It doesn't have the same feel because culturally, French and English not quite the same, and they're a little bit more friendlier on the Quebec Survivor series. Like Julie is my wife. Julie and I were looking, and I'm like, a little bit different, a little bit friendlier, but it's about to get nasty because as you start vetting people and emotions will get into play. But at the end, they all become friends when it's all said and done. So it's one of the only series that I watch, but we do have it as a family conversational piece because we just see the temperament styles. We just see them in action. And then from there, We have our favorite, and sometimes you always have a blind side. So it's kind of neat when it's like, wow, that person never saw it coming. I wonder why. Because you spoke the right words, and it spoke to your temperament style. It spoke to who you are, and you just trusted them when you should not have trusted them. I think the last series of Survivors. The first thing is the first time they broke the record. It's the first time that five people voted off left with an immunity bracelet in their pocket. Never done before, and that speaks to, wow, that was a good blindside. The fact that you weren't able to see that. And it's like, what happens in your life, in your business, or in your personal relationships when you do have blind sides, that misunderstanding that we have. The communication is simple. Communication is simple. It's just not easy. Did you understand what I meant for you to understand? And that in Bosnia, English is the working language. And at the safe house, we had 5 to 7 different nationalities. So, and in Canada, we'll be bilingual. Most of us are bilingual, or at least speak 2 languages. In Europe, they often speak anywhere from 4 to 7 different languages, and English is one of the last one that they learn. So, did you understand what I meant for you to understand? Even my interpreter that we had in Bosnia, a 19-year-old university dropout, because after the war or during the war, everything stopped. So, her vocabulary was limited in regards to always translating the same way. So, communication is simple. It's just not easy. Did you understand what I meant for you to understand? So, and I'm a big advocate that when communication breaks down, blame the process, not the people. Blame the process.
So we've touched on it a couple of times here, but your familiar model for perceiving the world is this 4 temperament model of human behavior. Can you give people a brief explanation of what this is so they have a little bit of background before we get into what will be some follow-ups?
So, there's over 200 different models that exist that we can learn to better understand human dynamics or human interactions. People often hear about Mars Briggs, True Colors, Strength Finder, Enneagrams, the Bank Code, the MMPI. There's just so many out there. The one that I've opted to learn and start teaching is known as the 4 temperament model of human behavior. It's also known as the DISC model of human behavior. So if you were to draw a circle right on the page, a circle, on the top of the page, you would write the word outgoing. And on the bottom of that circle, you would write the word reserve. As in Marsden, so William Moulton Marsden is the inventor of this methodology. So inside of us, we all have this motor of activity, an engine, if you wish, a preference. I like to say it's a preference towards things being more outgoing, fast paced, or things to be more reserved, slower paced. One is not better or worse. It is just different. But we do have our preferences. I prefer working in an environment that's more outgoing. Julie, my wife, prefers to work in an environment that's more reserved. My son prefers to work in an environment that's more reserved. My daughter prefers to work in an environment that's more outgoing. One is not better or worse. It is just different. You and I, we can be moderately outgoing, moderate reserved, extremely reserved. Again, it's just a preference. These are differences. So when it comes to reading people's preferred communication style, that's the first one to be able to notice, as in, do they talk fast or do they talk slow? Loud or soft? They walk fast, walk slowly. It's easy to discern the pace perspective in regard, interacting with people. Marsden also theorized that inside of us we have a compass. A compass has it gives you an orientation, a direction, a preference towards a direction. So with that circle on the top, you wrote outgoing. On the bottom of that circle, you wrote reserve. On the left side, you would write the word task, and on the on the left side, on the left side, you will write the word task, and on the right side, you write the word people. As in, you have a preference towards task, doing, accomplishing, getting things done, or towards interacting, socializing, being with people as you get things done. So again, we can be moderately extremely task oriented, moderately people, extremely people. So with that, it creates 4 quadrants. The top left quadrant, you would put the letter D in there, as in that culture tends to be a little bit more direct. as in and then because this model transcends all the different cultures, as in you can actually see it manifest in a different continent. Now, on the top right quadrant, you put the letter I. So that country is the I country. That culture tends to be more inspiring. We know them as our inspiring style blend. Still on the right side, but the lower right, you put the letter S. S is the country that you're visiting, and that culture tends to be more supportive. We know them as our supportive style blend. They are also by far the nicest people you're going to come across in life. And again, reserve yet task oriented, that's the quadrant. You'd put the letter C, that's the C country. And that culture tends to be more cautious. It's a culture that's more cautious, and quite often they're referred to as the smartest people you're going to come across in life. So, reading it clockwise at top left and going clockwise, you have the letters D, I, S, and C. It's an acronym. It's easy to remember. So, this is known as the four temperament model of human behavior, or the DISC model of human behavior. So, it's nothing new. It's something that's got created in with The Emotions of Normal People was his first book that he wrote, and it evolved ever since. He's also the creator or the pioneer behind the polygraph. So I've experienced going through a polygraph. So the strip that goes around your chest for the breathing, that was his creation. So he's the pioneer because now there's more sensories involved in the polygraph. So William Moulton Marsden definitely is a person that I enjoyed the model because I learned so much about it. When I got a book, I was part of the Book of the Month program, and that book that month was A Positive Personality Profile by Dr. Robert Rome. I didn't like the color of the book was the Barney color. It had the circle disc, but it was crooked, like it was bent for some reason. But there was a story behind that you have to flex, adapt to be able to read the message. Oh, fine. I turned the book and I see there was a website, personalityinsights.com. What's that? So I just went in, and then I saw that there was a certification program to be certified as a human behavior consultant. Well, that's the lane that I'm in. Within I'm like, how come I didn't find out about this? Well, that makes sense. So I looked at where Atlanta was, never been there before, and it was a 3-day course. So I booked myself to go and get accredited and certified. And it was a defining moment in my life in regards to, I wish I had this in high school. That would have been so easy for me, or better for me, to find a vocational direction, understanding how I'm wired. See, what I've found out is that we are the sum of all our experiences. So I was born and raised in Northern Ontario. So you would know where North Bay and Sudbury is. Well, there's just 22 kilometers north Sturgeon Falls, which is between North Bay and Sudbury is Sturgeon Falls. Well, 22 kilometers north of that is a small village called Field. Well, it's very much a French village. I grew up there, grew up with an entrepreneurial family. We owned a gas station, we owned a sawmill, we had a chip harvester. So that's how I grew up in that small village. We're the sum of all our experiences. Oh, I joined the military at 20 years in. Oh, I'm 25 years in my own training and development company. We are the sum of all our experiences. That's one lens that we have. The other is that we are the sum of all of our ancestors. That's your hardcore DNA. So your nurture, how you were brought up, and your nature, how you're wired, creates these filters that you see life through. So you and I have this in common. You are the sum of all your experiences, your nurture. And you are the sum of all your ancestors. That's your hardcore DNA. You're wired a certain way. And if you stay true to yourself, stay true to your strength, you will never burn out. Right? Your strengths will carry you. Your lowest traits should concern you so that you have life balance. So for me, it was like an epiphany. It was like, oh my gosh. And I became a student for life right there. That was September of 1999. I still remember the month. My gosh. And then from there, fast track, I brought that whole program up in Canada, converted it to a French and an English, and then got invited to be their training director and worked with them on their staff to develop the whole market for them to impact. And now I'm recognized as a global authority, specifically in the French side, global authority in the DISC model of human behavior. So I train trainers, and I train also people to become master trainers. The law enforcement uses this tool. CRA uses it. I teach it at the Ottawa University in the course that I offer. I do a course on influencing and leading others. And if you think about this, if you're going to be an agent of influence, like Blake, you can become an agent of influence. You are actually by having a podcast. You're influencing a desired outcome. You're passing a message to other people. To becoming an agent of influence, how are you going to influence and lead others if you don't have a model of reference? Because you will not lead a persona that's in the D quadrant, dominant, direct, demanding, or a persona that's in the I quadrant, influencing, inducing, interactive, a persona that's in the S quadrant, supportive, sweet, shy, or a persona that's in that C quadrant, cautious, calculating, conscientious. You wouldn't influence, you wouldn't lead them the same way because they have different needs and different expectations. And if you can recognize the two P's to decoding human capital, I shared it in regards to there's always a pace perspective, there's always a priority perspective. And when you can discern their pace and their priority, you have a start point of communicating in that quadrant. That self-declared mayor of Mostar, my gosh, he was definitely task oriented. Task oriented. Like I was communicating to him in the S quadrant initially to be friendly. The four F's to connecting with people. When you're talking to that D persona, that dominant, direct, demanding, you have to communicate to them in a firm manner. But the I persona, you want to connect with them, you have to talk in a fun manner. The S persona, not the same. You have to communicate with them in a friendly manner. And for the the C persona, that you have to communicate with them in a factual manner. When connecting with people matters. So you're at a disadvantage if you don't have a model of reference because you cannot not communicate. Everyone will communicate their preferred communication style. You just have to pay attention to, are they fast-paced, slower paced? Are they using more technical terms? Or are they using more feeling terms? One thing that I will share with people quite often after a meeting, people will say, so what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think we should do? What do you think? What do you think? Well, that's a very task way of asking that question. But what if that person's on the people side? And that's not the word that they use. The word they use is feel. So how do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel about this? What do you feel we should do? What do you feel? What do you feel? So sometimes you're going to use your preferred language. So I would share with others, just use both. So if I was to say to you, Blake, so Blake, so what do you feel or think we should do after this podcast?
I think I'm gonna make some breakfast.
I think, right? You're going to provide an orientation towards, oh, well, I think I'm going to make myself some breakfast. So when you use those words, now you can reframe them in people oriented or task oriented wording. On the task side, they think things through, but on the people side, they feel things through. And not having this model of reference, just having a model, pick one out of the 200, pick one that fits into your lane and master it. Put in the time and the effort to learn, to study, and teach it. I'm a big advocate. You need to start teaching. The faster you start teaching the model, the faster you start assimilating the model. So the same thing with my students at the university. I give them all the tools. Here you go. Here's a 9-page PDF on what is DISC. There you go. Start teaching it. Use that document, put it to everybody, and start teaching what you've learned on our training today so that they can start assimilating the information. Same thing for your audience. If they wanted to have the 10 most effective feel-good ice-breaking question, we put it on our website. Use them. You'll see that it's branded into the retired spy, little dun 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 dun. It has a little feel to it, but there's plenty of information in there in regards to how do you apply it. You'll never have enough time to ask the 10 questions. You can master one or two of these questions, and from there be able to discern their preferred communication style and then talk in a firm, fun, friendly, or factual manner. And people will feel that they feel understood with your interaction. I wish this was taught to us when we were in high school, all the interpersonal, and it's even more important today because a lot of people are doing life through social media versus actually doing life in real time, interacting with people. The social skills are missing at this time.
You talk about this inability to not communicate. And if we're using this model primarily to be able to connect with others, obviously there is the nefarious side of this that could be used for ill intent. But if we are using this specifically to try to connect with others, and we're looking at a quick way to easily discern where people fall on the spectrum. If you had sort of 3 of the largest tells that would place people in one of these quadrants so we could be able to connect with them quickly, what would some of those tells be?
Before you can start discerning, you have to have a baseline. You have to have an opportunity to know what's normal. What's their baseline? One of the programs that I was volunteered was to be on a prisoner handling and tactical questioning course in the UK. All I heard is who wants to go to the UK. So apparently I had volunteered. In there, we got stripped, got thrown into a cell, and we experienced what they call a harsh interrogation. That was not on the agenda. The Brits have a way of training that, well, if you're going to be an interrogator, it doesn't make sense that you should know what it feels like to be interrogated. After the harsh interrogations, get dressed and get back in the classroom. So I was out of my element. I'm like, why did I actually volunteer for this? Why am I here? How can I actually pass this course where I don't know what is happening? And then they started debriefing. I was student number 3, and they were debriefing. Okay, student number 3, and what they were able to capture. And I was flabbergasted right there. I'm like, I didn't answer one question, but you knew exactly what was going through my mind. How the heck did you know this? And this instructor attributed this to something called BSA, Behavioral Symptom Analysis. Now, later on, I found out that it takes its roots in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So I went to get accredited and certified. It's 125 hours. You have to write a paper for you to get your credentials as a practitioner in NLP. It really helped me, the fact that I had the DISC model of human behavior and the NLP accreditation, to better discern baselines. Because just because you touch your nose doesn't mean that you're embellishing or that you're lying. It could be allergies. It could be anything. So you have to have a baseline first. And here's where things get messy or tricky, or where people often fall prey. We have this thing called first impression. You see someone, he does something, aha, he's a D, right off the bat. That's labeling, categorizing, and pigeonholing. First of all, the model was not designed to label, categorize, or pigeonhole. The model was designed to better understand people. But we tend to have first impression, and we call it out. Now, this is known as the principle of conceptual consistency. This was shared to me by Guy Harris. He's very smart. He's the recovering engineer. He used to drive nuclear submarines for the US Navy. He's freaking smart. And I would say first impression, and then Guy would say, yes, that's the principle of conceptual consistency. Like, I didn't come up with this stuff. And I'm like, excuse you? What? And then he shared with me, he said, well, JJ, have you ever noticed that when you make a call, your opinion of someone, you look for everything around to justify your opinion of that someone, and you neglect everything else that contradicts your opinion of that someone? Yeah, that's the principle of conceptual consistency. So when you equip people with the DISC model, quite often my biggest concern is that they're going to go out and start and say, you're a D, you're an I, you're an S, you're a C. That's labeling, categorizing, as in you don't have a baseline, and you're not able to effectively then to read people. Because if you don't have a model of reference, the S persona tends to be very, very shy. Very shy. And if you ask a question, they don't answer it directly. They have to think things through. Because the question could be a yes or no question, or a yes or no answer is required, and it takes forever for them to answer. Why? Because they have to reflect on, well, if I say yes, who's going to be impacted? How's that going to work? Well, if I say no, how am I going to be able? They go through all this process. They have to think things through. And that's the same thing for the C and the S. So you can misread it as in you're trying to hide the truth. It's just a yes or no. See, the outgoing personas can answer questions rapidly. They are more external thinkers, and the C and the F, they're more internal thinkers. And if you didn't have that model of reference, you'd pass judgment. You'd have that first opinion or that principle of conceptual consistency. And that's where you fall prey. When you're reading people, you have to read the clues and cues in clusters. You asked a question, right? Like that self-declared mayor of Mostar. After a while, we were asking very, very direct question. And the little bugger spoke English. He understood English. We were always going through an interpreter. So it was always going through interpreter him. But he was able to speak over her capabilities, and then he would know exactly how she translated, and then he would embell or put us or give us an off ramp. So one time we were very direct, and I had practiced with my interpreter. I want you to use the same tone to be. If I'm direct, I want you to come across as very direct. And I always look at the contact, never look at the interpreter, so that the interpreter sort of like is a machine. Is that the interpreter will disappear, and you'll be able to really connect with that person, even if you're in a second language. And we were all going very, very direct because we wanted to get it clear. And I remember one time he just pushed himself from the table. He crossed his arms, gripping. It was a gripping cross. Then his hand goes over his mouth. And now he turns and he starts rubbing his ear and then digging for gold. Afterwards, he finishes and then he comes for the conversation. So from there, that would be a cluster of pushing back, cross arm. Oh, this is a gripping. That's different, as in, okay, is he feeling threatened? Maybe the tone was there. Then losing eye contact, turning, the eye accessing cues. If you are familiar of virtually or auditorily, there's a feeling, you go in an area. Our internal dialogue, you go down towards your left, but if there's a feeling, you tend to go down. So you see all of these, and you have to analyze in clusters, as in that one question generated this cluster, where now he's no longer in his normal posture. So when it comes to reading people, the tails, you have to be very careful because you have to have a baseline. And you have to have also a model of reference because you can misread people. So there's no real three things that I'm looking for. First, I'm looking for congruency. So congruency would be something like this. If I say yes and my head goes up and down, absolutely. If I say absolutely, but the head gesture is from yeah, absolutely not, is what I'm saying. So I'm looking for congruency in the physiology. Now, there's some misunderstanding, misconception in regards to you'll have the 55% of communication and 38% of communication and 7% communication. That 55, 35, 7, that's based on Dr. Albert Mehrabian's research. And it's been misused so much. His research was in regards to when there's a lack of congruency, people will trust the nonverbal 93% more than the verbal. So when I'm looking at people, I will trust more of the nonverbal cues versus the word that you choose to use. So three tells, there's a lot for you to discover in regards to this. For me, that the congruency will actually assist. And we are not going to do any business if my wife is not with me, because my wife can actually read people better than I can read people. You can talk a mean language that speaks my language with the business, and we're going to grow and we're going to do this. But she's on the feeling side, and there's just something that just doesn't feel right. And then I'm like, okay, what is that feeling? And then I'm looking at discerning it. Because in the past, I didn't pay attention to this. What does feeling have to do with anything? And then I would lose $5,000 in that transaction. But Julie had a feeling. Down the road, there was another opportunity. Fast forward, I lost $7,000 in that transaction. Julie had a feeling. When I lost over $10,000 in a business transaction and Julie had a feeling, we had to do something because I can't start losing all of those transactions. So now what happens is you're going to come over to our house for lunch, and we're going to have lunch. And Julie's going to make probably one of her best chilies ever and a nice spread. And we're going to spend some time. And then we're going to go down to the office, talk about business. Don't make any commitments. Then you will leave. And then I will come back and with Julie, what was your feeling? And then I would go with who, what, where, when, why, just to make sure, because sometimes we get blinded by our own expectations. Like we want this to be the greatest thing ever, and you miss all the clues and cues of there was a disconnect. Oh, well, that person said that he's been on the $1 million club with 3 different companies, but he got fired 3 times. It talks about him being game, but he still drives. Well, back then was a Pinto, Chevette Pinto. It was like an IKEA car, eh, a Lada, a British, yeah, a Russian Lada. Anyways, as in he talks a mean game, but he doesn't have the fruit of the tree. So I don't really have the 3 tails. I do know for me, having a strong sense of self, I can better read people. And I know that my strengths will carry me. My lowest trait should concern me. So my lowest trait happens to be the S quadrant, but Julie has that. So I can pull from that and get a sense so that I don't fall victim when interacting with people. Best thing is that never make a decision on the moment. Always sleep on it. Because the next day, you got to sign right now. I got to sign right now. Well, or else you're going to miss that opportunity. Well, okay. And then, when you do have you ever experienced like timeshare? Like you go to a presentation and Las Vegas free. Hey, you can stay at the hotel for free, but you have to go and look at this 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And it's like, okay, but you get the free weekend in Las Vegas just for 30 minutes. And that 30 minutes turns into 3 hours. And then they all leading questions of, yeah, everyone wants vacation. They're always using the stats of how life balance, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And you just say, I can't afford that. And then the next person comes in and he got a better deal. Can't afford that. And then the other person comes in and he has a better deal. Well, wait a minute. Before this person said it was 25. This one said it was 15. Now you're saying it's only 5K? Really? So timeshare, and it's just they start practicing and reading, and then you just politely learn to sleep on it, but they want you to sign right there in the spot. Well, I need 24 hours to reflect on this, but they can't let you go because as soon as you go, the chances are 90% of them don't come back to sign an agreement. So that could be some a wise insights for you to just sleep on it. If they're, never make a decision based on urgency, like financially, but reading people. Are they looking at you in the eyes? So if you, like, I know BSA, so I can look at their eye accessing cues and where they're going, and I can see their approach. They're asking all these feel good questions to discern my personality. Right? I can read it. I can see it because I'm trained in it. And then sometimes I correct them. Says, no, no, no. I'm the outgoing and task oriented. She's the reserved and people. You want to talk about dream building, you have to talk about her. If you get her on board, then maybe you're going to get me because she's my queen and I'm the king, and the king always wants to make sure that the queen is happy. And they just look at you because they know the couple as in their opposites, but they're using it. Is it to influence people or to manipulate people? Because you talked about this as in when you have a model or reference, you can use it for good or you can use it for bad. Influencing is for a win-win. That's how I define it. It's driven by an intent. One is for a win-win and the other is for personal gain. manipulating for personal gain, and that never goes far when that happens because once you've been burnt, you learn from that and you don't put yourself in that. Hey, next time, um, go on one of these free weekend for a 30-minute presentation and experience it, my friend. Oh my gosh. And just say, I can't afford that. And then you're going to see the price go down. And you're going to agree with everything they say. I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I just can't afford that. I just can't afford. When they ask you when they come in if you have a credit card, hmm. So that's a clue. Hey, this is going to be fun. But use that as a way of studying how they do marketing, how they do their sales pitch. So you can have a lot of fun. Well, I do now. Have a lot of fun and looking how they go about doing this.
You mentioned feeling like your kids had a head start because they learned this 4 temperament model early. What's
Yeah.
the best, most effective method for communicating this or educating our kids on these concepts?
A self-assessment, as in a child's preference is already set by the age of 4 to 5. So we do have a psychometric assessment. We do have a tool. It's on our website where a parent can have them do the questionnaire. It's 24 questions. So from the age of, let's say, 5 to 11, you would do what they call bots. It's 4 robots doing an activity. And then the child selects the robot they like the most in the activity and the robot they like the least in the activity 24 times. Then they go. You receive the results. Like for me, being that I came from the military, my son was maybe 12 or 13 back then, and my daughter was about 7 or 8. They have a 5-year gap. And my concern is that I was going to parent like a drill sergeant. I was always concerned that I was going to be too hard or too regimental, and you hear too many war stories when it comes to this. So in the model, I decided I was going to do bots, and then I did that with my daughter, and it produced 30 to 45-page computerized report. It's divided into three. The first third of the report is for the child, and I would read her results. I would read, and it's self-esteem, self-worth go up the roof because the child sees that they're not in competition. They're uniquely wired, driven. There's beautiful traits. It's all positive in regards to the traits that are grounded and under control. The second third of the report is for the parent. This is your child. This is how to parent to the traits of your child. That's what I was looking for. That's what I needed to make sure that I can connect. And then the last third of the reports for the teacher. This is your student. This is how to teach to the traits of your student. So I would always photocopy that last part of the report and give it to all our professors at school. Gave me an edge or gave her an edge. And the professors would look at the report, look at my daughter, look at the report, look at my daughter. Where did you get these? Because they want it for everyone, because you can actually see the team dynamic. And with my daughter, we would profile the teachers before starting school so that she would model the teacher. She would adapt to the teacher, vice versa, because she had the tool and she it became a game. And that's how we had some fun with this. Now, my son, like my daughter's very strong in the I quadrant, inspiring, influencing, inducing. My son's very strong in the C quadrant, cautious, calculating, conscientious. I think at the age of 22 or 23, he was a senior financial advisor for the Canadian Coast Guard. How the heck do you do that? And then he was doing so much overtime, like he was doing a job of 2 people. He decided, you know what, quality of life. He transited out. They went after him to bring him back 9 months after because they replaced him with 2 people and they were still not doing the work that he was doing. And now he's in charge of the section, as in he replaced the boss. And then now he's actually in a position where at a young age of 25, now he's 30, and they're looking for him to be becoming an EX1. And it's like, because he has an ability of making sense of the people puzzle. There's a task component, but he's very strong in the S style blend, and then in the D. So in university, he was in a major in entrepreneurial and a minor in finance. So he's able to think about finance. He's able to talk to people and then get them to move, get results. So he has a style blend. We all have a style blend. So he's been dyskinesia at a very young age, and he's been using it throughout in his career, and it's working. For my daughter, very strong in the I. She's an ISD style blend. So she'll make you laugh, she'll make you cry, but she also will get results. She signed her first dance contract, and she did competitive dancing at the age of 8. She did that for 10 years. And she would win, not because she had the top score, but she would win the judges' special awards. And that's recognition. She's always looking for recognition. But in her dance, oh my gosh, so funny. But then she could make you cry. And then she likes to win. So when you understand that style blend, so I have two kids and they rotate this way. And when they're together, they're the life of the party and they play very well. Julie and I are just opposite also. And then we also play. But what we have in common is the C trait, meaning that what's logical for her tends to be logical for me. So this is where we start our conversation. We now have business retreats in Cancun when we do couples retreats, where we actually go through on how to assist the couples in better understanding themselves and celebrating their differences versus tolerating their differences. And it's just a great opportunity to make a difference because there's 4 levels of awareness that you're going to go through your life. Environmental awareness is a moment in time where you discover, experience something new. So high school, college, university, military, you discover, experience something new. Train interrogator, discovered, experienced something new. Contact handler, discovered something new, experienced it. But the second step is situational awareness. It's a moment in time where you are boots on the ground, where you get to apply what you've discovered and experienced in an environment. But you're not going to be able to move up the chain if you don't have a strong sense of self, and that's self awareness. Out of all the tools, pick one, master it. Because from there, you'll be able to protect yourself from yourself in times of need. And then you'll be able to step to the fourth one, which is the highest level of awareness, which is I call legacy awareness, where everything that you've invested in your life outlives your life, that your life mattered, that you made a difference, right? You leave a legacy behind of, not chaos, but like a legacy of change. So I'm in that stage right now where I'm looking at creating or helping people to become agents of influence. Being that agent, just going out and creating a positive atmosphere, whether it's at home or in the workplace, where you get to equip people for works of service, where people can celebrate their differences versus tolerate their differences, where trust is incorporated, innovation and productivity thrives when trust is established. It takes just a moment in time to lose that trust. It takes so much to build and just a moment in time to lose it. And by having an awareness of who you are. See, if you don't have self awareness, what tends to happen, Blake? You go back to environmental awareness. You go back to school, and then situation. Oh, environment, situation, environment. You keep on looping and looping, and you're one of the you're always at school, and you're having what I call a TED moment, temporary enthusiasm disorder. Oh, new course, yay, go back. Now it doesn't work. On new course, yay, go back. Now it doesn't work. Because you don't have a strong sense of self. And if you have a strong sense of self, you can protect yourself and know what needs to be put in place for you to thrive and not just survive in today's chaotic, more hostile environment that we live in. Make sense of all of this.
What's the power and importance of the question, how can I be a better friend to you?
Oh my gosh. Oh, you're bringing me back there. I hated that question. Absolutely hated it. I was on an assignment working with my friend Carl Smith. And Carl was so hard. Carl's very strong in the S quadrant, and he's just so hard on himself. He went through a divorce and reliving it every day, like for 3 years. Dude, you didn't do anything wrong. It's like she had an affair, and I've never gone through this, so I don't know what that feels like losing. And I'm like, from a D, we would respond a certain way. From an S, they tend to absorb, and he was reliving it. Now, when you're an instructor, when you're a trainer and you're in front of an audience, it's a privileged platform. And you have to talk from a state of victory, not a state of victim. It's a privilege to impact on people. And for me, when I was seeing on the stage, when he was training, it just felt like there was therapy. It was an opportunity for him to talk about, and it was more therapeutic. And it was not about them, it was about him. And he would refer to her as his ex. I hate that term. My ex. It has such a negative connotation. If there's a story that you want to share to make a point, you can say my former wife, my former husband, my former partner. That, it's easier to receive than my ex. And I was disappointed. Now, in the car, you don't know this, but Carl drives a Porsche. And I'm a big dude. I don't fit in the Porsche. And it was a two-door, like there's no room in it for me. Now, I'm not driving, I'm a passenger, which I don't necessarily like. I never thought I was going to die in Bosnia, but in Atlanta, and 9 lanes of highway, and the car is so small, and the semi trucks, and he would drive, and then he would look at me, just keep your eye on the freaking road. It's like, but then he asked me that question. Oh my gosh. See, Blake, you're bringing this back. I hated it. A dude's asking another dude, how can I be a better friend to you? Dude, I don't want to be a friend. I don't want to learn how to be a friend. I don't want to make a friend. I'm like, the responsibility. It's just that word just drove me crazy because what I wanted to do when he asked that question is just freaking smack him right behind the head or something. And I just said to him, just get better. Like mentally, he like physically is one thing, but to be mentally healthy. And I just blurted it out. And it I was ticked off for a month, and I was talking to my mentor, Dr. Robert Rome, and he goes, well, JJ, that's why are you so upset? He just wants to know how he can be a better friend. And then I didn't know what or I didn't want to have that responsibility. Maybe that was it. Or if I'm a friend, I have to share my feelings, my emotions, and I have to care. I'm not wired for that. I'm definitely on the task side of things. It only came about. Oh my gosh, what a good question. A month after talking to Dr. Rome, I had a colleague that came into the office. And I asked Jim, his name is Jim Carty, and I asked Jim, can I ask you a personal question? Because I set the tone. Can I ask you a personal question? And Jim goes, absolutely. And Jim's high off the chart. It's like that, like he's everywhere. And I said, it's okay, Jim, if you don't want to answer it, you can reflect on this. But I'm just curious, can I ask you a personal question? Like I really want meaningful conversation. I don't want clown humor type of conversation. And he stops, he looks at me, yeah, what's your question? And I looked at him and says, how can I be a better friend to you? Now, when that happens, Jim pushed himself from the table. He went down. He went down. He was looking at his feet. Then he went to his left, and that's known as internal dialogue. As in, you go down and he's repeating the question, thinking it out, and then he's going towards his right, and that's attributed to a feeling attached to this. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting some very good clues and cues, and I'm thinking, oh, I can use this when I teach BSA, behavioral symptom analysis, the eye accessing cues, how he went down, he went there. I don't know what he's talking to himself about, but that's probably internal dialogue. And then there was a feeling attached to this, and then he's just bouncing, and the nonverbal cues is fantastic. And then he comes out of it, looks at me, and he says, make me more accountable. Whoa, because that I persona, shiny object syndrome, squirrel, they often get distracted. What he needed from me is to help him to stay focused. I'm like, wow, what a powerful question. And that's probably why Carl upset me with the question, because I haven't used it. What was the value of this? And I saw this with my colleague, and I'm like, I wonder if this would work with my son. Because one day we're sitting at the kitchen table, and I had experience Indian cuisine when I was over in the UK, because it's almost our fast food. And I started cooking, and then my son also developed that taste and loved it. Naan with buttered chicken curry. And I looked at my son and I said, Joel, I'm just curious. See that question again. I'm just curious, right? And it's okay if you want to reflect on this. You don't have to answer. You can sleep on it. I'm just curious. Can I ask you a personal question? He's eating, Blake. He's not stopping. Yeah. What's your question? Like a teenager. Forget it. As in, I need for him to for this to be serious. And he says, "Nah, it's okay." And then he goes, "No, no. What's your question?" He's eating. And I asked him, "How can I be a better father to you?" Whoa. He does the same thing. He pushes himself from the table. He goes down, right? He goes internal dialogue, and then there's a feeling attached, and it's taking forever. Jim was kind of fast, but Joel is kind of more reserved, and he's just bouncing left and right, and he's taking forever. And I'm thinking he's going to come up with a smart remark. He's probably going to ask me for a car. He comes out of it, and looks at me, and he says, "Spend more time with me." Wow. Now that just never came to my mind, that what he was looking for was quality time. And it's like I was missing the boat. I thought it was all about providing, 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 but what he wanted is just some quality time. And that really hurt. So from that question, I was ticked off, and my mentor said, why should you be? But when I got a chance to apply it, I got value from that question. And I was better because I was stretched. That question stretched me. And until I actually found an application for it, as in actually use it, where I could gain some value in regards to Jim, in regards to my son Joel. And last year, for his 30th birthday, he wanted to do a father and son trip. Oh, where do you want to go? He wanted to go to Germany. So we went to Germany. We spent a whole week together in Germany. Huh. And it was just that story came back. I'm like, isn't that interesting? The quality time. And so we have something that will never go away. And now, once a year, we go to a Canadian football game, CFL. So he'll come from Montreal. So he has to take from Montreal, and come from Ottawa. So I'll have to take from Ottawa. So at the game, Montreal is coming to Ottawa. And we just saw them this last weekend. It was a preseason. So in September. So we already have the tickets. He's coming down from Montreal, and we're going to spend the day lunch catching up. So it's the quality time now that's more important than all of this. So when you have one of these character building moments, a question, for me, it's like, okay, I haven't found any value, but from there, now I can actually use it and teach it with others and challenge people. When you go back home tonight, talk to your wife, your daughter, your son, your mom, your dad, ask them that question. How can I be a better to you? And see what comes out. You'd be surprised. It took me 2 years to actually ask that question to my daughter, because it was too traumatic when I asked that to my son, because I didn't want to experience that back to back. So thank you for asking. You brought some good flashbacks there.
I have one final question that I like to ask all of my guests, and it's, what's the last opinion or belief that you changed your mind about?
What's the last belief?
Opinion or belief that you changed your mind about?
That's a thought-provoking question. See, now I'm going into, I have to reflect on it. The only thing that comes to my mind is just do the next right thing. Life is so challenging. Before, like I have to be in control of everything, and with my presence, I can have some form of control, exert my leadership. get a desired outcome and the results, I've come to realize that just do the next right thing. As in, it's, when life provides us a character building moments and we just don't know what to do, well, just do the next right thing. And sometimes doing the next right thing is put your PJs on, brush your teeth, go to bed. Just do the next right thing. Life's hard. And I used to think that I was in control of everything. Like there is a God and it's not me. I was informed of that at a very young age. But now it's more of, yeah, day to day, moment by moment, day to day, week by week. Like during COVID, when we were in lockdown in COVID, what got me through, just do the next right thing. It was just day by day, just going through day by day and with the challenges. Before I would have maybe have just barked a little bit more. Now it's like, is there any value of saying anything right now? No, just don't say anything. Just do the next right thing. Like for you, would be to have breakfast.
There you go. It's time. JJ, I love it. Thank you very much for joining me for this conversation this morning. If we want to send people to find all your stuff, where should they go?
Simple to go to theretiredspy.com. So everything is actually on the website. There's free resources there for people who want to learn more about the 10 most effective feel-good ice-breaking questions. If you want to learn about the model, it's there. The site's bilingual. You also have a calendar where you can actually track me. And if you wanted to connect, complimentary 30 minutes discovery call, there's a link that you could actually see my calendar. And it would be my pleasure to connect with anyone or member of your audience who wants more information. Yeah, on my past and or what we're doing.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.